don't want to be reductive and just boil it down to these one or two things, but I'm kind of like, when you've got a really good foundation and you got a great roster, one tweak can do it. They're in sport mode. Can they get into four-wheel drive a little bit? Can they be pissed off when they take the field? Yes, this football team looks like a 10-win football team to me. It really does. Now, a lot of that's going to be predicated on how Rodgers plays. Now, the last team is the Browns. And Browns fans, I know you're out there. All right, so this is the AFC North, one of the most interesting divisions in football, and this is my 8th and final division preview. And I am not unhappy about that at all, because these things take a while. I hope you've enjoyed them. And as the divisions go on, it's like we get a better look at what each team's going to be, because more preseason action. Finally get a chance being off the road to catch up on a lot of that preseason football. So what we've got is a good look at the AFC North. So if you've been waiting, here it is. Can't wait to dive into it. But first, I just want to mention this to y'all on this call, Cowboy, Tanner, Nolan. Have y'all seen the NFL's like attempt to be the NBA with the uniforms?
Yes.
It's hideous. I know that all the young people love it. I saw the young people putting it, and I'm old, dude. I'm 40 years old. I realize that all my employees are like early 30s, late 20s. But I saw some of y'all putting in the group text yesterday, like, man, this is icy. Like, check this one out. This is dope.
I think
like,
it's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag, brother.
There's some good ones in there.
It's not good. As a whole, it's not good. Which ones are the good ones?
How about, all right, so these Bills ones, you like these Bills? Icy whites?
You know what I like better? Like fucking Josh Allen in a red bucket. Let's do that.
True.
I mean, like we're trying to do.
I do think these are outstanding. I think it like once a year.
Yeah, it'll be cool. It'll be something different, but I don't think it's like a cool uniform. Like I don't think it's that great a uniform.
Well, you damn sure better hope it doesn't snow, because
you won't be able to see them.
I should be playing blind in the passing game.
So what do the Cardinals do? They just kind of.
Well, the Cardinals, it looks like they just threw dirt on.
It's like an art project.
Yeah, exactly. And
called the Built to Last. With the Cardinals situated in a desert, it's only fitting that their look is emblematic of the climate. The all-white uniform has a texture meant to represent sand and dust storms that occur in the state.
I mean, honestly, it looks like the longest yard jerseys. Like
yeah.
They were out in the dust a little too long.
I actually I got down with the helmet a little bit, but yeah, the jerseys are just, like Reed said, they just threw dirt on. They're just dirty white jerseys.
That's so funny.
Let's dirty them up, boys.
And look, the Bills, snowy and icy conditions at home are very much part of the Bills' DNA, and their uniforms tap into those elements. So we're just like, wherever the team is, we're just going to put like a hometown twist on it.
How about the terrain? How about the 49ers font? You like this?
I actually think the 49ers might be interesting looking, and I think the all black uniforms are generally like cop outs at this point. It's not 2002 anymore, where like you could just be like, oh, my high school's got an all black uniform now. That's kind of cool. Like every school had like a all black alternate for a while, and then it kind of got old to me. These are actually decent. The numbers are pretty cool.
I dig the little faithful ad, and then this was, we all thought the Patriots were pretty clean.
Yeah, I just thought, following in the like, hey, the Arizona, we're getting a dust storm. Bills, we're getting a cold front, like it's going to be ice. And then I was thinking maybe like the Pats uniforms would be covered in like racial slurs.
These are fresh. There's something about this shade of blue that
is just clean. You're right.
Fire.
Yep. And I like the NE
right.
on the.
They're not bad. They're not bad.
I like the NE on the shoulder pad.
And I'm taking the Patriots over win total, just so everybody knows. I'll let you know on Sunday if I chickened out. But so I'm into the reflective silver stripes across the shoulders and along the pant sides represents beams of light that shine off Gillette Stadium lighthouse, standing 218 feet tall and over 22 stories above the playing field. It is the tallest non-traditional lighthouse in the country. The Rams, that's an interesting shade. The Dolphins all black. That's hideous to me.
Well, I think that's it. I think there are some teams with whatever your usual color scheme is, you should never do the all black look, and this is
That's
one of them.
hideous.
I mean,
That's
this
hideous.
is like,
And then they got like number 52 in there with like,
yeah,
it's just a real nasty look. Although, like, honestly, the name plate and the number on the back look good on Phillips' uniform, but like, there's a better way to do that.
I think white. You do white lettering, not
pretty,
orange. But yeah, these are
whatever it is. It's just not working for me. We're gonna talk about the AFC North here, and the AFC North. They're not doing these cutesy uniforms because this is one of the most classic divisions in football. Some of them still play on grass. Some of them still wear their original uniforms. It is a throwback type division, and the team on top is a throwback type team. Although they throw a totally new look offense at you with all the flavor of an old running attack and all that stuff. I mean, they really are creative. They're an incredibly talented football team. Like if you looked at the Ravens, and we're going to start with the Ravens, and I might not spend as much time on the Ravens just because, as Ravens fans know, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about just fucking driving the car, dude. Just come January, you have to do all the things you did during the season and just continue those things. Like I'll start with the good, okay, before we get to the bad. I mean, there's a lot of good, right? Like if you look at this team on paper without the context of how they performed in the playoffs the last, 5 times they've been in the playoffs, you would say, man, this might be the best team in football. Like they've got MVP caliber quarterback. You could have told me he should have won the MVP last year. I wouldn't argue with you. And I'm a huge Josh Allen fan, but Lamar is fantastic. You've got Derrick Henry, who's he was collecting DBs like bugs on windshields last year. I mean, like he's just he's a stud. He's the ageless wonder. You've got a nice receiving core outside. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, and that's been the thing over the years that people have nitpicked about. Well, not nitpicked. They've been fair about it, that Lamar hasn't had all the weapons. But you can't, when you fill the backfield cup up, there's not water to put in the wide receiver cup, to the point where you have like Green Bay Packers type receiver room where it's super deep, or a really top heavy receiver room like Cincinnati. You're going to have Zay Flowers, who's a really tough cover in the slot and can do a lot for you. You've got Bateman, who came on last year, and then you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, which is kind of like you never know what you're going to get, veteran wide receiver, but probably likely like a number 3. So when you add that to an offensive line that was reshuffled a bit last year and is replacing only one guy on basically the number 1 offense in the NFL in the regular season, there's no reason to think they're not going to be right back where they were. But it's what you do when you get there, okay? So it's a program. Like the Baltimore Ravens are one of the few programmatic teams in the NFL. We talked about this with the Bucs. There are certain teams, the Eagles have become one of those teams, right, where they have ways of doing things and they draft well. And a lot of times, the Ravens have a long tradition of drafting well. They have a tradition of finding great defensive players early in the draft. They've got a tradition of finding gems like later in the draft. And, they've just had a pretty high hit rate from a distance. The way I look at it, like they're retooling, that's why I look at this thing and I say, okay, last year, what did the Ravens go through before they became that team that I just described? And I was just talking about the offense, where they're one of the best offenses in the NFL. And that's not a huge surprise to people. But they also ended up being one of the best defenses in the NFL, and that's not at all how it looked at the beginning of the season. So starting last year in 2024, high hopes. Your season starts out with, hey, you lose your defensive coordinator to Seattle in Mike McDonald, who did a fantastic job there. He's doing a really good job in Seattle. We'll see where that goes. But they replace him with a guy who's like y'all's age, respectfully. Mm-hmm. Like, he's in his early 30s, in Zach Orr. And then, he's running out of safety group, and I don't know whose decision it was, that consisted of Jackson and Williams. And Eddie Jackson wasn't anything like he was early in his career, and Marcus Williams wasn't real good either. And some of that tape was really hideous. And, Brandon Stevens, who just got $12 million in New York, was getting cooked for a lot of that first half of the season. And honestly, it's a little bit of a head scratcher, but I trust Aaron Glenn. He'll figure that out. That's the problems that they were dealt on defense. The offensive line coach died in preseason. Like, that's something you just don't have to deal with in the NFL. And he'd been in the game a long time. And so, like, that's a big – there's some things that would rock the boat for any team. And as a result, I talked about the safety play that they rolled out. Lamar was wearing Max Crosby week 2 in a loss to the Raiders. In the same game, the secondary is getting cooked, discovering who Brock Bowers is, etc. Like, it was an ugly start. And, I think they played the Chiefs in the opener and made their fair share of mistakes in that game. And ultimately, hey, that's a little preview into the future. Like, this team in the biggest moments plays sloppy, okay? But when we talk about the hands that they were dealt, they did a fantastic job last year of stabilizing. And so I want to give, John Harbaugh a lot of credit. I want to give Zach Orr a lot of credit. I want to give Monken a lot of credit. Like, these guys did a fantastic job of making the necessary adjustments. We called for one of them early in the season. That was Rosengarten, the Washington tackle, the rookie. We said we need to insert him in the lineup. Like, if I'm in the locker room, I'm saying, hey, Makari, he's a very good guard, or he's a serviceable guard. But that's kind of what he is, and he's out there playing tackle. He's trying to block Max Crosby. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so Rosengarten comes in when he's ready. That kind of changed the deal. They start the season without Keaton Mitchell as well, who was really good before his knee injury his rookie year, and eventually get him back. Defensively, it took a lot longer to right the ship. I think it was around the week 9 or 10 where, you're coming out of the midpoint of the season and you're saying, hey, the back end, it's not sustainable. Kyle Hamilton's got to play safety. And they move him back to safety. You get Ardarius Washington out there, who made some big plays for them last year. I thought he was fantastic. And the defense kind of stabilized. And sometimes it is as simple on an NFL offense or an NFL defense as, I don't want to be reductive and just boil it down to these one or two things. But I'm kind of like, hey, when you've got a really good foundation and you got a great roster, one tweak can do it. And that's what happened. Like, offensively and defensively, they made little tweaks, and they were a fucking wagon. The Ravens, they'll play those teams. I feel like the Ravens are that team where if you think you're on the cusp, go play the Ravens and you'll find out where you're at. It's like they've kind of, and then sometimes they'll lose to teams like, the Browns or the Raiders.
Yeah, you said the Raiders, yeah.
All right, so they can be a little bit confounding in that way, but like, as far as like teams that when they play Denver and they beat them 41-10, like, that's like, hey, Denver thinks, hey, we might be pretty good. You go play these guys, see what you think, right? I can remember Detroit got their asses kicked by them 2 years ago. Well, Detroit turned out to be pretty good, but it's a like, sometimes playing this team feels like running into a buzzsaw. The Commanders were hot when they played the Commanders. Well, Washington hung in that game, but Baltimore was kind of in control of the game. They were in control of the game. I think they rushed for, I'm looking at this game right now, they rushed for 176 yards. They just stayed at it. They wore them down. They're a motherfucker to play. So I got a lot of respect for the Ravens. Obviously, they're programmatic. And, they're looking at last season, and, I would agree, like, when you look at the roster, there's not a ton of huge holes. And that's because they put themselves in positions over the years where they're just building. They're constantly building. They're tinkering with stuff. And I think that's what this year is all about, is like, hey, what they did in the draft. Like, when I preview the Ravens, I'm mostly looking at, like, hey, what can they do better in the playoffs when they get there? Because they will be there. And what did they do in the draft and in free agency? Okay, well, I look at the draft this year and I say, hey, the Starks pickup is great. You absolutely have to do it because Ardarius Washington got hurt this offseason. He's had durability issues, and he played great last year and all that. But Malachi Starks from Georgia, got to watch him play in the preseason. He's just, you put him back there with Hamilton, and they both have the range to do either thing. It gives flexibility to how you play the safety position. Either of them can be the center fielder. I think Starks is probably comfortable in the box. I think he's rangy as hell. I know. I watched him. I saw him make a play against Dallas that showed off his range playing center field back there. He throws his body around. I've seen him string out a TFL, and he's passing people on the way to the football. I mean, he's just he can really run. He's athletic. He throws his body around. He's physical. Like he's a Ravens player.
Yep.
And so I think, I don't want to say check there, like, because you've only seen him play in the preseason, but he looks like he's going to be a player. Okay, so you got in the safety situation is going to be much better off than it was to start the season last year. You bring in Jair Alexander, who probably at this point, might end up being the guy that comes in on third down or in nickel situations, right? Because you've got Nate Wiggins, who was real good last year outside. You've got Marlon Humphrey, who's going to probably play the slot for you. And, on base downs, he's going to be a corner. So, in nickel situations, that's where you need Jair Alexander to come in and give you quality snaps outside. And, his health, that's going to be a question mark. But other than that, I look at the secondary and say, like, they're in a pretty good spot to start the season. They're definitely in a better spot than they were last year. And look what they turned that whole thing into. Up front, you got OA, who's in a contract season, who's kind of turned it on. Kyle Van Noy, he's played fantastic, KG veteran, kind of perfect for what they do. He really is. He's older. Not to be ageist or anything, but you just never know. You never know. Like, listen, like when you're playing well as a 33, 34-year-old, like, with one hand they're clapping for you, the other hand they're looking for like your replacement. So it's kind of a like to bring in Mike Green. And I just want to say this, like, he was at Virginia for a second. I didn't even know he was at Virginia. I don't follow college football as closely. I don't follow my alma mater as closely as I used to because of this job partially. I had no idea about his checkered history. And so, like, I'm going to analyze the player, and we can kind of debate, should he be on a football team? Another time he is on a football team. However you feel about it. His off the field conduct, alleged conduct, factors into why he fell in the draft. Because when I look at, like, we're going to get to Shamar Stewart in a second, and some of these rookies, like, hey, and they're all rookies. Mike Green's pro ready. Like, he plays with his hands. He's both phases. He plays with his hands. He's got ankle flexion. I saw a still shot of him again. People sending me pictures of Abdul Carter's ankle sideways, and he's not hurt. He's just rushing the passer. Same thing with Mike Green. Like, this guy, he's got the flexion, he's got the bend. He can really play. He plays with his hands. I really like his game. He might struggle with more overpowering longer players. Like, I want to see him, not that these guys are, the standard when it comes to pass protection in the NFL against Mims and Brown and guys like that. Broderick Jones. Does he kind of get eaten up a little bit in the run game because his frame isn't that big? I'll tell you what, he can play. He's a football player. Buchanan, the kid they brought in, but I don't think he's necessarily ready yet. So what you got is you got Simpson and Roquan Smith in there at backer. You talked about the edges you got. I think you're good inside, right? Like, you got Matabike, you got those guys inside. This isn't rocket science. It's building on who you are, and it's showing up in the biggest moments. And I thought the defense got a lot better as the year went on last year. Wiggins was hitting on that pick was huge.
Yep.
And now looking like they've hit on the Starks pick is huge as well. And, they also drafted a kicker, as we're talking about off the field issues right here. So what do you make of it? I don't know. I think this defense is going to be pretty good. It's going to be
for all these guys in this defense too, Chris, like, year two in a system, you could probably speak to it, but generally, even guys who are veteran players, there's an element of just feeling a little bit more comfortable in the system that can help you elevate your play too going into that second year.
Yep, no question, no question. I was barely on defenses that in 2 years of a system and a defense, but the couple times I do remember. We're looking at the Ravens offense now. Again, you've got basically a perennial MVP candidate. You've got a Mack truck for a running back. The offensive line is rock solid. You bring in Noteboom as depth, which I think is great because he's a swing player. You never know when you're going to need him to play guard or tackle. Falele is a bit of a pass pro. I wouldn't say a nightmare, but he's definitely not up to the standard. They really like him. He's a big towering individual. They're bringing him up in the system. So, he's going to play guard and the other guard's going to be Voorhees. And Falele, I had complaints again about the pass pro last year. I mean, it wasn't an emergency. I thought things stabilized when they moved Rosengarten in the lineup. And Voorhees comes in. At one point was a very talented tackle prospect. It was an ACL with Voorhees, but that's why he fell in the draft. I mean, again, like an athletic guy, athletic enough to play tackle. We'll see how he pans out at guard for the Ravens. But yeah, the Ravens, man, with Keaton Mitchell healthy, with veteran DeAndre Hopkins coming in, see what you get out of that thing out at wide receiver. That's the one place where I'm probably like, hey, they're not elite at wide receiver. It's not the strength of their offense, but you really can't have it all. You really can't have it all. I also love Justice Hill. I think Justice Hill does a great job. The Ravens they are who they are. And they're going to bully a lot of teams, and they're going to win 14 games and unless something's wrong. The only question I have offensively is Likely healthy? He's coming off an injury. He is so essential to what they do. We talked about the wide receiver room. I'm trying to think of another group like this where, it's kind of like the Broncos, where you've got a wide receiver room you like, but you don't love. And then you bring in Evan Ingram and, Sean Payton's got his joker. Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews do a lot for them. Look at the Bills. The Bills wide receiver room, it's not knocking anybody's, socks off. Last couple of years, people have written them. Last year, that people wrote that offense off on account of not having the firepower outside, but the offense runs through the tight ends. I think you can say a lot of the same thing when it comes to the to the Ravens. I mean, but Likely, it's kind of Likely's turn now, right?
Yeah.
We've seen this coming where it's you're kind of passing the torch to Likely. He's going to become more the primary target, and Mark Andrews admirably has still he's never complained. He's not one of those guys where you can sense that he's like, oh, it's not my turn anymore. He just had to make the play in the playoffs, and he didn't make the play in the playoffs, and that leads me into the playoffs, which is kind of that's what this thing's all about. You've got this team that when you watch them in the regular season, they beat the shit out of people. They look like a wagon. They've got swagger. They have physicality. And if you ever pick against them, Ravens fans get pissed off. They're like, you must hate Lamar Jackson. Anybody that works for me and has heard me talk about Lamar Jackson, I always have to say this because some fans are so damn sensitive. Anybody that works for me or listens to this podcast knows I love Lamar Jackson. But Lamar Jackson has to play better in the playoffs. And I'm not the first person to say that. And even the most, optimistic Lamar and Ravens fans would probably agree that it is how great you've looked in the regular season. You're kind of a victim of your own success, where it's you have to look that good in the postseason, or people are going to ask questions. And they haven't looked that good in the postseason. They haven't even been close. You talk about the Andrews drop 2-point conversion. That's kind of emblematic of, in my opinion, I put it this way at the end of this season last year. The big moments are really not generally too big for the Ravens, although that was a big moment that they didn't really live up to, ironically. A lot of times it's the little moments. It's the mistakes. It's the interception early in the game. It's a fumble. It's in 2023, it's Zay Flowers' fumble at the goal line, which in the flow of the game, it's not a fourth quarter play with the game on the line, but It's the 8 penalties. It's the dumb penalties. It's the personal fouls. It's abandoning the run game in 2023. You come out of the half and that's the year if you want to get the Chiefs. Last year would have been the year too, but like in 23, I really do think the Ravens had a chance in that game. Like they were probably the better football team, but they did not play better in the playoffs. That's the thing that separated the Chiefs and the Ravens is like people will look at the Chiefs. They're kind of inverses where people look at the Chiefs all year and be like, what the fuck is wrong with the Chiefs? 23, there's no way. They dropped the football. It's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They don't have the explosives anymore. Last year, like, the offensive line's terrible. It's embarrassing. They're barely beating teams. And then they find themselves in the Super Bowl. They get blown out, but they end up in the Super Bowl. This Ravens team plays like clinic football at times in the regular season. And then when it's time to go to the postseason and showcase the MVP quarterback, the run game, which they abandoned in 23, the defense, a coach who's been around forever, the penalties, the stupid, penalties, the boneheaded stuff. It's frustrating. I'm not a Ravens fan. I'm not from Baltimore, but it frustrates me for y'all because you kind of get set up for this to expect something. And then you get to the postseason. And it's not just 24 and 23. Like this goes back all the way to 2019, that Titans game, which was a shit show. Their turnovers in that game. They don't show up in the Bills game in 20. They lose 17-3. So it's a well-earned reputation. You can't get upset with me for telling you what it is. I think this team's fantastic, but they got to be fantastic in January too. So the division definitely goes through Baltimore. And, if somebody were to tell me, hey, they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, I'd say, hey, like if they wake up September 6th or whatever, and they're like, hey, I get it now. Like I know how to play postseason football, then I would say, hey, they probably have the best chance of winning the Super Bowl. But it's the postseason history for me that do they win this division? Yeah, maybe going away. I don't know. Here's the other team. Well, actually one of many teams in the AFC North, pretty much all of them that can frustrate the fuck out of their fans. The Cincinnati Bengals. Okay. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Okay. In 2021, when Joe Burrow took a 4-win team from 2020 and played him into the Super Bowl, if somebody told you, Bengals fan, that they would miss the playoffs 2 of the next 3 years, what would you think? You would think, oh, Joe Burrow got hurt again. Like, because in the modern NFL, like, there are guys like Lamar who haven't won in the playoffs, but they're in the playoffs every year. The best quarterbacks in the NFL generally go to the playoffs. The fact that Joe Burrow, who should be like the face of the NFL or a face of the NFL, and he is. I mean, the Netflix documentary, the whole thing. He's driving around a Batmobile. He's dating celebrities. Like he should be K-pop famous, dude. Joe Burrow should be like a global icon. That's how good he is at quarterback. And that's how cool he is. But instead, he's sitting on the same fucking couch I am in January. Like annually now. 2 years in a row. Sitting in the same spot as you in January. I can't think of I'm not an NBA fan like that anymore. But like, and it's not the city edition jerseys. It's just there's too much basketball. I don't know who it would be like missing the playoffs. Would it be like Giannis not being in the playoffs? Like I'm not really sure, but it'd be like one of the best players on the planet not being in the playoffs every year, which is bad for the league and it's also confounding. Like it's totally fucking confounding. Listen, 21, they're right there. They can't beat the Rams. 22, they're right there. I think 22. I thought they had the Chiefs in 22. They did have the Chiefs, but that Osai penalty. So they've been so close, and otherwise they've been at home in January. That is wild shit to me. And so bear with me here. Remember the Drew Brees era in New Orleans? Huge success, right? Hall of Fame quarterback, won a Super Bowl, just monster numbers every year. And he didn't have Jamar Chase. He didn't have T. Higgins. He had Jimmy Graham, he had Colston, he had, some weapons, dude, but he didn't have these guys. This show is a lot of fun to watch. But imagine in 2009, let's say they don't win that game in the Super Bowl. Let's say they don't recover the onside kick. And you look back at Drew Brees, Hall of Fame quarterback, like monster numbers, threw for 50 miles. Like, you're going to tell me he didn't win a Super Bowl? You wasted that. Well, obviously he won a Super Bowl. We're not doing revisionist history, but I would liken where Burrow's tenure in Cincinnati's headed to an alternate universe where Brees doesn't win a Super Bowl. And I'm saying that because of the lows. In today's NFL, if you have a top 3-5 quarterback and he's not in the playoffs, there's something wrong organizationally. And I think New Orleans at times skated on the fact that thank God they won that Super Bowl, at the turn of the decade there, because they were 7-9 like 6 times.
Yeah.
6 times?
5 times, yeah.
5 times. 7-9, 5 times. They had Drew Brees at quarterback and were home in the playoffs 5 times. And there were good quarterbacks in the NFC, but it wasn't like being in the AFC. So, like, you actually had an opportunity to really make runs with that quarterback, and he was sitting on the couch in January that many times. And every time, pretty much, I went back and looked, it was a defense. Defense being a bottom 5-10 unit, dude, like some years last. And that to me is just, it's a waste of elite quarterbacking years, dude. And Burrow's going through the same thing. Now, when the Saints had good defenses, when Greg Williams in 2009 elevated that defense and they became like a top 5 unit, they went to Super Bowl, they won it. When they were good in 18, when they were on the doorstep, they had a really good defense. In 13, they had a top 5 defense to go to the playoffs. But there were a lot of years the Saints didn't make the playoffs. And so I look at the Bengals and I'm like, bro, like you're flirting with that without the ring. And that would be a disappointment of epic proportions. Like, if they don't make the playoffs this year, I feel like they kind of owe it to the talent around with Joe Burrow and the talent around him to make a change at head coach. And I'm not saying Zach Taylor's a bad coach, and I'm not even calling him Marvin Lewis, who was there almost 2 decades and never won a playoff game. Okay, he didn't have Joe Burrow, though. They have to realize the gravity of this situation. Like 16, 17, 18, Marvin Lewis, I believe, didn't go to the playoffs, and that was it. And that wasn't even the first 3-year run without a playoff appearance, but I think enough was enough. Like, you have to realize the gravity of the situation. This guy threw for 40 touchdowns last year and like 7 picks. He was a fucking machine with no O-line. You talk about his offensive line since he's been there. I mean, it's so funny because, like, it's not funny. He got his knee snapped damn near in half the first year he played. And the next year they go to the draft and they're like, you know what? We'll take Jamar Chase. And everybody's like, did you see Penei Sewell was there? And everybody's like, you're trying to kill your quarterback. And it's one of those things like, are you sure you want to do that? It's like when a drunk guy does something like kind of impressive. He's like, I can do it. I can walk on the edge or whatever. And the motherfucker goes up there and tight ropes the edge of the wall or whatever it is. And everybody's like, man, that was cool, but like probably not advisable. That was kind of the feeling I got when they made the Jamar Chase thing work and Joe didn't get like broken in half over the next couple of years. Like, although he was close at times, you're like, yeah, it worked, but I wouldn't do it again. I'm not second guessing Jamar Chase, the best fucking receiver in football, according to a lot of people. But what I am saying is like that philosophical decision is kind of emblematic of how they've treated the offensive line. I'm not saying I'd have done things differently, but they have completely whiffed on a lot of the offensive line decisions. And at times they just haven't poured into it. And here we are, like I think they've had a kind of a bottom 10 offensive line for most of, if not all of his career. And that's not even really the thing that sank him. The point I'm making is the defenses are what's going to probably ultimately be the thing you look back and say, like, you couldn't get a competitive middle of the pack defense to play opposite this fantastic quarterback.
The Bengals are the only offensive line in the NFL to rank 25th or worse in pass block win rate in 4 straight years. 2021 they were 30, 22 they were 30, 2023 they were 27th, and last year they were 32nd.
And I guess it's one of those things where they've decided, like, Joe's that good. We really don't need a great offensive line. And to that I would say eventually you will. But it's pretty wild. Like, just if you could just be middle of the pack defensively and have a decent offensive line, can you imagine what this guy would be able to do? And another thing is, we talk about the offensive line typically not being very good, the defense typically not being very good, even though Lou Anarumo was a DC I really liked, and they had bright spots. Like, the problem a lot of times is this team is asleep. This team's sleepwalking in September, dude. Zach Taylor teams are 1-11 in the first 2 weeks of the season. They've been 9-win teams the past 2 years. And in December, we always say this, like, regardless of how bad the defense was last year or the year before, or like whatever, you would say, hey, the Bengals are that team that they don't want to see, like the teams in the playoffs don't want to see, because they have Joe Burrow and they got the big three. And it's games like the Patriots mess where, you know, you're like, damn, that game really would have helped. And we could go down the line as we talk about coaching in all the games where I thought that they just situationally and from an execution standpoint down the stretch, they invented new ways to lose games last year. I'm not going to go through it all because I lived it. I had the Bengals over win total ticket. And every year I had Dr. Fax telling me they were cooked, and he really couldn't explain why. You know, for his point to be right, they would have had to invented a brand new way to lose the next week, and they did it all year. And I had to wear it every week. So I've lived this thing. It's almost like I'm a Bengals fan. Okay? Like, they have to be better in the beginning of the season because they are going to find ways to fuck up games in the months of October, November, and December. That's just who the Bengals are. This year, you're in a two game season. Browns and Jags out the gate. You got to be 2-0 because the next month you got at Vikings, at Broncos, at Packers with a home game against the Lions in the middle. You got to set that fucking alarm clock, dude. I mean, the alarm clock should be already going off. And you talk about like Joe Burrow in the preseason. He's taken 18 preseason snaps in his career. But that's really not the issue. I don't think it's the preseason snaps. I think it's the reasons he's missing the preseason snaps have held him out of valuable time in camp. Rookie year, there was COVID. 22, he had an appendectomy. 23, he had a calf. You know, obviously there was the ACL rehab. Like, he's just had to deal with a lot in his off seasons. I think it's bled into not necessarily how he's played the position all the time, but like how the offense has operated, especially early in the season. And that's just tough, man, because this is a team that can't afford to drop 2 games in the beginning of the season. So this has to be an inflection point in general for this team this year. You got to start fast. You got to win your division games. And obviously the defense has to get cleaned up. But when you have a defense that's on paper, the roster's not great, it can be one of the hardest things to fix. Like, it's just there's nobody coming to the rescue. Once you've drafted your players, once you've made your cuts, you know, if you got a problem, you either got to go find somebody, you got to trade for somebody, or, you know, you have to develop the guys on defense. And the guy that's going to save the day this year, or at least I hope, is my old coach, Al Golden. He was my coach at Virginia. He used to dog cuss me. I loved Al Golden. And he was at Notre Dame last year. Certainly, you know, was an aggressive group that played man, and, you know, certainly they had a little bit different personnel. And I don't know how much of a correlation there always is between a college coach going to the pros and how the scheme is in college football and what you carry into the pros. I also don't know how much of a correlation there is between preseason performance and the scheme that you roll out in preseason and what you do in the regular season. And frankly, I hope there is no correlation. because last night, as I'm putting the finishing touches on doing this report, I'm doing the thing where I talk myself into the Bengals because the offense is so fucking good. We'll get to that in a second. And I'm like, there's no way the defense could be as bad as last year, right? Like, here's the case I'm building in my head. Okay, the secondary. I mean, could it have been worse? You know, Cam Taylor-Britt was benched at one point. Dax Hill, he moved from safety to corner and then tore his ACL in week 5. And then DJ Turner broke his clavicle after filling in for Hill. Jordan Battle and Geno Stone, who played really well in 23, both of them regressed. I'm like, okay, either everybody got hurt, it totally threw the shit off, or, maybe the scheme was too complicated and nobody was getting it because like multiple guys regressed. In situations like that, sometimes it's kind of like the Houston O-line room. Can they kind of be like the Houston O-line room where, you had high hopes or higher hopes, played terrible. Everybody knows there's a big wart on Cincinnati in the form of the defensive backs room. And maybe it's scheme, maybe it's just the flu. Like proverbial flu, where this group just played terrible. There's a dark cloud hanging over their head and they need a fresh start. And there were injuries and that sort of thing. There were injuries all over the field for this team last year, up front, linebacker, everything. So there's a lot of that where I'm like, okay, maybe if they're just healthy, maybe this rookie Knight, who's 25, the backer, 25 years old. I'm reading quotes over the offseason, and man, he's better in coverage than we thought. We drafted him to be a big guy, like a thumper, like he can add in the rush, he can fit downhill runs. Pratt struggled in coverage last year and missed a lot of tackles. Maybe we get the most of this guy Knight. I mean, he is 25. He should be pro ready. He doesn't look like he's there quite yet, but I see it. Like I see it. Linebacker's a tough one to diagnose in preseason when you're looking at rookies.
Yeah.
From a standpoint of like, you can't expect guys to come in and look like Fred Warner,
Right.
or Matt Milano. Like they just know what they're doing and they run to the ball. It's tough, and especially when you're watching preseason tape against a run offense like the Commanders or something like that. You're like, damn, okay, that's tough out of the gate. So I have hope for this guy, dude. I read some quotes, and I sent you this quote last night, Nolan, on Shamar Stewart, who, by the way, the defense, they got everybody signed.
Yeah, I've got it here.
Yeah, they got everybody signed here. I'm pulling it up. This is what I want to read. This is from Orlando Brown Jr. Okay, before I do this, they got everybody signed. Okay, everybody was like, oh, they're not going to get Shamar Stewart inked. They got him inked, and maybe, he lost some valuable time in the offseason. Trey Hendrickson, he knows how to play football. They also got a deal on Trey Hendrickson because days later, Micah Parsons is making fucking $47 million. Okay, and you get him for 30. So Hendrickson, Shamar, you got them locked up. This is the Shamar Stewart quote that I heard before watching his preseason tape. In terms of his ability naturally to be able to bend, his speed, he's got an extremely rare combination, said Bengals offensive tackle Orlando Brown Jr., a 4-time Pro Bowler and Super Bowl champ. To me, he's going to be one of the best in the league once he gets it down. Once he gets it down, he's doing a lot of heavy lifting there. And maybe I didn't read that as closely as I should have. And I certainly, dude, I was a rookie once and I probably looked lost in preseason. So I totally, and Al Golden's probably saying the same thing. Like I used to coach a guy named Chris Long who fucking sucked when he got to Virginia. And he sucked when he got in the league his first year. Like he just didn't know what he was doing. Okay, I don't want to look back at my preseason tape, but I'm looking at Shamar Stewart, and the one thing is like, dude, he's got to play with his hands. Mm-hmm. They need him to play. Yep. They need him to play. Like they need him to play this year. It's not, like Baltimore drafts Mike Green, who they don't need to play, but is ready to play right now.
Right.
And the Bengals draft Shamar Stewart earlier, and he's not ready to play just yet. Now, I don't want to discount the fact that, like, in the next month, he could make a big leap because he missed a lot of the offseason. But number one, he's got to play with his hands. Like, that's a non-negotiable at this level. he has to play with his hands. The athletic ability, I don't doubt it, but we all know it's more than that. So I hope to see him play well for the sake of this defensive line and for Al Golden and for Trey Hendrickson, because I don't know that Osai is going to get you a lot of pass rush production.
Right.
Miles Murphy has to step up if that's who you think is going to be. I will say that in the good news department, Chris Jenkins looks great.
Mm-hmm.
I think he really looks good. The guy played with a fucking club on his hand last year. I think he looks good. I'm excited to see him play. I also think they got a guy in TJ Slayton who they like.
Yep.
So on the interior, BJ Hill's still there. This defense has maybe made strides forward, but until I open up that rip the wrapping paper up, what's the fucking secondary look like this year for the Bengals?
Right.
You never know what you're going to get. It's the Forrest Gump adage. And so, I just want to see what the secondary looks like. If the secondary looks better than last year, could this group be a middle of the pack defense? If they're a middle of the pack defense, they can win the division. That's how strongly I feel about that team. Last year was dog shit defensively. And they were within they could have sneezed and won 3 more games. Like it was insane to me the way that they invented new ways to lose. And so we'll talk about the offense here. The weapons are the weapons. Okay. This offseason, they got it done. Everybody's, I'm so worried about it. Oh my God, they're not going to be able to do it. They got it done. Mike Gesicki, 3 years, $25 million. And that's what everybody was holding their breath about. And they were able to sign the receivers too. So you've got Jamar Chase, Higgins. They're not separated. They're together. They're going to stay together. And Yoshivas, who was really good in the red zone, really like him. But he's got one of the best jobs on the fucking planet, dude. Like, honestly, it's like being Oprah's husband. Being this guy, dude. I mean, he's Stedman. He's a good player. But golly, dude, I would be fucking lining up outside the stadium to play for free as the number 3 receiver in this offense.
Yep.
It's like rushing next to Chris Jones. So 2 teams I'm gonna have for you Sunday night. The I'm rooting for you guys team and the best job team. Yoshivas is up there. All right. And they played more 12 personnel last year. So I don't love the depth because they got guys like Jermaine Burton behind them who couldn't even show up on time for shit last year. And I'd love to see them turn it on. But if they get into trouble, they can go 12. They were in 12 almost 30% of the time last year, which is a big uptick from the 11 personnel usage a year before, where 12 personnel, you get both your tight ends out there. Gesicki counts as one. He gives you formation and personnel flexibility. So the weapons are the weapons. I love the backfield. P. Ryan's back. I love P. Ryan. He was one of my favorite unsung Bengals his first time around during that stint. Always seemed to break a big tackle, catch the ball late and down, right? Like he was a security blanket personified. And Chase Brown, I think, is fantastic. Exploded on the scene last year. Really like him. Makes his cuts at full speed. His burst from 80 to 100%, if you know what I mean. He's got rare traits. He does everything right. He just does everything right. I don't know that he's when I say rare traits, I don't mean he's like Adrian Peterson or something or Derrick Henry or one of these guys, but he's rare in that he seems to just do everything right.
Yep.
And his vision is really good, man. He's running behind an offensive line that isn't a powerhouse. Mm-hmm. And I think the one thing he does really well is when you play the Bengals, those linebackers, they're not firing downhill, dude. They're guys are on their heels because of the threat of play action and Joe Burrow's mastery of every area of the field. All right. When you get that little bit of space at the second level, once he crosses the line of scrimmage, I think he bursts from yard +1 to +10 as fast as anybody. So he's going to get you those little explosives all year. He's also really good as a scramble drill back. Like he does a very good job late and down. So you got two backs that can catch the ball in the backfield. The offensive line, not the greatest tackle room. Okay, they're two towering dudes. You'd like to see Mims take the next step this year. You know, for a guy that big who was going to be a project, you knew that at times technique wasn't going to be on point, right? You got Karras at center. You're really revamping the guard position with Hunter Fairchild and Lucas Patrick, and you've got depth with Lucas Rivers, and Risner comes in from Minnesota. So
Dylan Fairchild.
Dylan Fairchild, you fucking even the boring waspy name.
You went pretty white there with Hunter.
Dylan Fairchild, Hunter Fairchild. Who are the fair children? We'll see, bro. I think there's a chance they got better up front.
Yeah,
I think there's a chance they got better up front. You know, Kappa really struggled last year. I'm not going to pretend to know how Fairchild's going to pan out, but they like him. You know, we've seen bits and pieces of it, and he looks like he can be an NFL guard. So, you know, then you just need to nail down the right guard spot. And none of this kept Joe Burrow from going off last year. So to me, I'm bullish on the offense. You know, I'm bullish on the offense. You talk about Chase Brown, how important he is to this team. Look at that Pittsburgh game to end the season. They really missed him. So, you know, I think they got a real plus at running back. They got great weapons outside. You know, the offensive line hopefully is improved. And Joe Burrow, you cannot discount emotion, the mood of a team. You know, can Baltimore turn what happened last year into anger? Or is it now become a thing where they're like, this happens every year? You know, and it starts to be a feeling that sticks around. You know, we're talking about abstract shit here. You know, and for the Bengals, do they turn last year into anger? Because the Joe Burrow I saw on the sideline against Tennessee, when poor Zach Taylor is like, no, it's not that bad, Joe. And he's like, we're getting fucking killed by the Titans. The Titans game. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that guy's got, I think if he can harness that anger and step up as a leader this offseason, I know he's a leader, but like really like start to, you know, there's a point as a leader where all of a sudden, like, you got to earn everybody's respect. He has that, you know, 100 times over. You got to be well liked. He's got that. But then you got to be a motherfucker sometimes.
Yep.
And I think we're into the Joe Burrow needs to be a motherfucker era of Bengals football. And I think he will. And I think he probably is already. Yep. So I think it's how do you parlay what happened last year into the way you take the field? They should be one of the angriest teams in the league on week one. But I don't know if that's in their DNA yet. You know, like, do they have that? They're in sport mode. Can they get into four-wheel drive a little bit? You know, like, can they be pissed off when they take the field? That it's not just, hey, who's playing corner, who's playing safety? Can you get something out of the rookie here? It's what's the personality of your football team?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be hard to wear the asshole hat, because last year drove me crazy and I only had like, you know, like a scooter on the Bengals. It's not my livelihood out there. You know what I'm saying? I don't play for the Bengals. I would be pissed off if I were a Bengal, and I take the field that way this year. Okay, yeah. Steelers. Talk about attitude. Here we go again. Like some Dr. Phil shit I got going on the AFC North. But like, I read an article last night about how Rodgers has kind of ingratiated himself into the locker room. Like he's and I think for a lot of us, the way we consume Rodgers is totally different than the way people in locker rooms consume Rodgers. You have to accept that. Even if you don't like what you see from him on the McAfee show, if he can rub you wrong, if you disagree with him wholeheartedly on some of the things that he's said, you know, I certainly would count myself as somebody at times that would be like, bro, enough. Like, we get it. Right?
Yeah.
But I also know that, like, when I've been around Aaron Rodgers briefly, I enjoyed the interaction. You know, you hear from guys in the locker room, like the echoing of, like, he's not what you think he is. He's not I don't know that guys in New York would say that, like all of them, right? Because a lot of what you think of a guy is based on how he plays and how the organization's playing and whatever happens in that year. So far in Pittsburgh, at least they're saying the right things. And I think Rodgers is saying the right things. And I also think people's attitudes can change, man. I'm 40 years old. Okay, like I've changed a lot over the last 5 years. You know, you're never done changing, you're never done evolving. And I think Rodgers, if nothing else, has an attitude where he's very thoughtful and open to change, maybe. Like he's going on ayahuasca retreats. You at least have to want to improve something in your life to do that. So not to like X's and O's and ayahuasca retreat, but what I am saying is like maybe Rodgers wants to turn over one last new leaf in the NFL. And that's what it'll take. It'll obviously take him looking sharp as he did in some of those later moments in New York. You know, some of the higher highs last year, he still looked like Aaron Rodgers from an arm talent standpoint. We'll talk about that. But like for me, it's how do you walk into this locker room, which I think is a locker room that it's a better one for him to walk into relative to the Jets locker room. When you walk into the Jets locker room, you have to set the culture.
Mm-hmm.
He might not be a culture setter. He might be a leader in his own right. He might be one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played the game, but that might have been a little bit much to ask of him and really anybody walking into a Jets locker room. That's why this year they're building things the right way, the long way. Okay? When you walk into the Pittsburgh locker room, Mike Tomlin's been there 2 decades. You've got one of the best defenses in football. You've got guys that have been there 10 years, leaders, Cam Hayward's, TJ Watts. The offense certainly is kind of a ball of clay. Like you don't have a lot of guys who have been there a long time offensively, stalwart type guys. But from a culture standpoint, you're walking into a building that demands your respect and it demands your best. And you would think you'd walk into any building that way, but I think his attitude's going to be one of, and probably has been one of, hey, let me meet these guys where they are and do the best I can to improve the situation. Rather than when you go to New York, you got to take the building over and you got to be the change. He has to help facilitate the change in Pittsburgh. And does that make sense, guys? Like
Yeah, totally.
I've read the quotes from other guys that are like, he's not who you think he is, which
Right.
obviously acknowledges that there is, a reputational thing when all you do is consume his stuff on the McAfee show or, hear his musings on like geopolitics or, pandemics or like whatever, however you feel. Like there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with him. This is football. You just got to be one of the guys. And so I think he came in this year and has tried to be one of the guys. Now, how long will that last? If somebody's on the wrong side of the fucking red line this year, I'm more curious to see like how he handles that. Right. So I hate to boil everything down to Rodgers. Steelers fans are sitting here saying like, well, who gives a fuck about all this? We got a great defense. We want to talk about the tackle situation. We want to talk about, the receiver depth, like whatever. Yes, this football team looks like a 10-win football team to me. It really does. Now, a lot of that's going to be predicated on how Rodgers plays. But when you look at the defense, we'll start with the defense. They're going to be pretty ridiculous up front. They have the luxury, kind of like Baltimore, where they're drafting ahead at certain positions.
Yep.
One of them is defensive tackle. They bring in this guy Harmon, because eventually Cam Hayward's going to stop playing like an all-pro. I don't know if it's going to happen before 2030. But eventually Benton and hopefully Harmon can be the guys that take the reins. Benton has done a really good job in pass rush so far. Harmon, to me, he's a big body. Okay, just to give you the rookie report, big body. He likes to swim people. That's how tall he is. And, he can definitely – he knows how to use his hands, which is a plus for me. He doesn't shed blocks quite as quickly as I'd like to see him shed blocks. So he's got a little bit of work to do with the hands. But he's in a great room to develop, man. And he's in a room, like I said, where the runway's longer. Some of these guys that have to play, we just talked about some of them. This guy doesn't have – he's going to have to play. They expect him to play. But if he's not great, they can kind of taper off. Like I saw him at one point getting a 40 look, which is basically like end tackle way out here and basically like a 5 and a wide 5. and then you also get the shade so that you force one-on-ones.
Yep.
And you manipulate protection. We used to do it in Philly a little bit. And he was out there in that fucking basically a 5 technique, not a 3, but he's rushing the guard, and he runs him clean over for a sack against Tampa. And by the way, watching Teddy Bridgewater take preseason reps in Tampa is just wild. But I think this guy's got some tools. And I guess the point I'm making is they have the luxury of, like, with a pick like this, hey, we're going to need you this year, but we don't capital N need you. It's not like Shamar Stewart, who's like, hey, you got to play. You got to be the guy this year. Cam Hayward's still a dog. And TJ Watt, still a dog. Okay, you bring in guys like Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. He's going to get to learn from, guys like Highsmith, Watt, Herbig. So you see how teams like this, where they draft the draft picks, you drop these draft picks on other teams. I don't know how it turns out. They're in an environment where it compounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I love about this defensive front. They have a culture. They have like an outside linebacker culture, a tradition. How many teams have traditions, like colleges have traditions for position players, right? Like, and the torch just keeps getting passed. And so I named all the guys outside, some studs inside. There's some guys that you want to develop inside. Queen and Wilson are the backers. I thought Wilson was great last year. I love watching him play. Liked him out of NC State. He's so rangy. I remember back to, like, I think it was the play against Baltimore where he took the football off
Justice Hill. But yeah, that was a crazy play.
Hill. Yeah.
When he midair took it off him.
Took it off. When you see that, you're like, okay, this guy can play for the Steelers, man. Like, they take the football away. Elliott and Thornhill's center fielder, corner depth, not great, but, like, when you nitpick at a roster and you say, well, it's the corner depth, that's the weakness. Like, roster's in pretty good shape. And then the offense here, I think the tackle play is the big question mark. Wide receiver, obviously, Roman Wilson has to take a step. I think he was hurt last year, wasn't he? And then you've got Calvin Austin. You've got Scotty Miller. You got Roman Wilson. But really, the stud outside is DK. Now, when we talk about being able to get the ball to these guys, it's the offensive line. Like Rodgers at this point in his career is more of a lawn deer, right? Now, we talked about the Achilles. The big mystery to me is people always say an Achilles is better the second year, like off it. Does that apply to like a 41, 42-year-old guy? We'll find out this year. If it does, then they've got a shot at the playoffs and maybe a chance to win a playoff game. I don't see this team as, like, unless there's some Rodgers revelation, as a team that makes a deep, deep run. But this defense is pretty fucking good. And if they can figure out the protection in front of them, I think they'll be tough to deal with, because Arthur Smith knows what he's doing. Okay, he okayed this thing. He has a vision for this offense. Your interior three is very good offensively. Like, it's a young, good offensive line, interior offensive line. McCormick, Frazier, Sayamalu, who's a vet. He's seen a lot. The good news is he's going to play next to Broderick Jones, who I kind of worry about. They moved him to left tackle. That's his old position, but you kind of can't tell. From a technique standpoint, he's a big mauling dude, but ever since he came in the league, he's big, he's grabby. I think he's going to give up a lot on inside moves this year. That's kind of what I see. You're going to have to help him. And so when you help him, you look at Fontenot, who actually looks pretty good out there at right tackle. I think he's got more potential as a pass protector. Like, he's got to be probably out on an island a little bit more. Like, you're going to have to help Broderick Jones a little bit more. And maybe he develops as the year goes on. Like, listen, changing the sides of the field is not easy. But Fontenot played one game last year. One game. And then you got Broderick Jones, who's changed his side. So tackle is a question mark. And it's a question mark with a quarterback who, as I said, can't really move. He's going to get the ball out of his hands quick. If we're going off of last year, like, he's going to get the football out. And I think when you look at what DK does well, like, hey, he can run the fuck out of a slant. And if you can scheme that big son of a bitch open with the ball in his hands and a full head of steam, like, that's going to be a problem for defenses. Now he can also catch a back shoulder and he can catch a deep ball. Like, I'm not saying he can't run a dig or anything like that, but what I'm saying is, like, the strengths of his game are catch and run underneath or take the top off the defense. And, Rodgers has the arm to get it to him. Will he have the time? That to me is the question. And then how are teams going to be able to scheme up the other wide receivers if nobody steps up and emerges, right?
Mhm.
So here's the big thing. We talk about tackles struggling. We talk about, wide receivers outside. Let's talk about the tight ends, because I think they have a good tight end room. Jonnu Smith, who can catch the football, Freiermuth, who they've had for some time, and then Darnell Washington, who's basically like, when you talk about where the shots are going to come from, you can max it up and take those shots. You can get in 12, 13 personnel, max it up and take those shots. At running back, the run game, going to be a big part of it. Do you miss Najee Harris? I don't know. Caleb Johnson's a rookie. Nolan, what'd you see on tape?
Yeah, he's a strong runner. I think
Yeah.
he fits. I think they're going to be a lot of outside zone this season, and you saw that in the preseason tape. He was pretty decisive with those runs, but a strong runner. I think a little bit more juice than what they had in Najee. So I think he's going to fit what they want to do really well.
And Noel, you asked this question, a good question. Like, Arthur Smith, with his history in Tennessee, like, does he have a Tennessee, like, 2000 late 2010s Tennessee vision for this group? Because, and it makes a lot of sense, tons of explosives, big wide receiver, punishing run game, play action pass. The only difference is you can't really move Aaron Rodgers off the spot,
Right.
like you could with Tannehill. But I'll take Rodgers' arm even at this age, as far as like being a pure quarterback over Tannehill. So, and I'm just talking about the arm talent and where you place the football. So don't tell me, some people on here just don't get context. But
it's just trying to figure out, like, looking at the personnel and trying to figure out what the vision's going to be. You said multiple tight ends, a freaky Ole Miss type receiver on the perimeter, and then a bigger back. They have now in Caleb Johnson. They could get into a lot of that kind of 2020 Tennessee. Derrick Henry had
and they ran zone. They ran zone to death. So I mean, that's kind of what they do. So we're excited about this. I mean, like I have secondhand excitement for Steelers fans. I think if Rodgers comes about it, like, from an attitude standpoint, the right way, and I think he will, and this team, the culture is intact, the defense is intact, you really just have to help the tackles and find a way to get production out of some receivers not named DK Metcalf.
Right.
And that's it's a lot of, hey, just, but when you're looking at a team that has had middling expectations with a low ceiling every year, I think the ceiling got a little higher. The only thing is, last year Russell Wilson was a great deep ball thrower.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is Rodgers going to be able to access that area of the field as efficiently?
Right.
I think he's going to do everything else better for different reasons. The Bengals and the Steelers are going to be tough. How it shakes out depends a lot on what we just talked about. Now, the last team is the Browns, and Browns fans, I know you're out there. What's it like? Like, honestly, what's it like? Because for a long time, I think there's always something endearing about being a fan of a team that doesn't win. Like, it's, I talked about this with the Cowboys. Like, now the Cowboys fans are looking kind of likable because they got to shovel shit all the time. And, like, the Browns never had that heyday. So, you've just been this way forever. Like, what is it like to be raised in a household where your parents tell you, like, the Browns will never win shit, and then you're telling your kids the Browns will never win shit, and now your kids are like, fuck the Browns, dude, I'm like a Bengals fan. Like, I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
But, like, not this year, guys. Not this year. And that's what happens when you take a stab at the wrong quarterback, who, by the way, has, like, civil cases out the ass and is suddenly injury prone because he took more sacks than Andrew Luck in Houston and nobody knew it. Like, I and now his brain is totally, like, he's not a quarterback anymore. I don't even know what to think of the Deshaun Watson situation, but it's over.
Right.
It's got to be over, and that's the best part about it for Browns fans is like, listen, like when that nightmare started, how long do you think it would last? Well, I think you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here. And I feel for Andrew Berry, and I feel for, well, in some ways, whoever made that fucking decision, I don't feel for him.
Right.
Like whoever made that decision deserves to wear it, seriously. But let's say it was just the owner or something like that. I feel for Stefanski. I feel for Barry from a standpoint of Stefanski's a good football coach.
Mm-hmm.
He really is. He's been dealt a lot of shitty cards. Baker Mayfield was not one of them. Maybe they're suffering from the curse of Baker Mayfield because, damn, for all the quarterbacks that they've been trying to replace this guy, they listened to Odell Beckham Jr. They've been trying so hard to find that quarterback for years where you got the jerseys with all the tape on the back and all the names, which is my favorite thing about Browns culture. And you had a guy, and now he's in Tampa, and it's crazy. It's just – and Andrew Berry's put together some good teams. Like, there's some good position players they've had on this football team. Many of them are going to be on other teams soon.
Yep.
Like we were talking about trade values on this team, like Bitonio, Pochik, Wyatt Teller, Conklin, Njoku, all contract years. So, maybe the fun thing to think about is like, hey, where does Njoku end up? Chargers, anybody? Maybe they send Conklin and Njoku to the Chargers. I bet the Chargers are watching a lot of Browns tape in September. Chiefs. How about Chiefs for Bitonio in case Kingsley Suamataia doesn't pan out this year? In the case that he doesn't pan out, I don't know why that wouldn't happen, but like Bitonio could make somebody very happy. Njoku could make somebody very happy. I think he's a Mike Vrabel type guy.
Yep.
What's a win for the Browns? You want your rookies to look good. Like number one, like Mason Graham, Schweisinger, your first two guys, off the board in the draft this year. You're 1 and 2. Like Mason Graham, in the little bit I've seen, the encouraging part is he plays blocks. Like that's a lot of guys I'm watching. They don't even know how to play blocks yet. So Mason Graham's playing blocks. Baby steps for the rookies. Baby steps for the team. I think a lot is going to be made of the quarterback situation because inevitably this is a team that's designed to lose. Maybe not intentionally, but, they're kind of like one of those things where you're already falling, like, let me fall a little faster. The Shedeur Sanders thing, it's first take fodder. It really is. Honestly, it's what's keeping the lights on in August is things like Shedeur Sanders. And, that people have just so poorly evaluated quarterbacks in preseason because they see the highlights. And he had some really nice throws in one of his games. And then, but I can show you just many lowlights, taking sacks, holding the ball for 5 seconds, getting pressure on like every play. At some point it's about the quarterback. Not to say he can't be a pro quarterback. And Dylan Gabriel's going through a lot of the same growing pains in different ways. Like that's what's happening around the league with rookie quarterbacks. So there will be a watchability, kind of a fucked up kind of watchability with the Browns this year because they're always going to be in the news. People are going to be asking for Shedeur. They're going to be asking for Gabriel. Gabriel's not going to play. See it with Shedeur. What did Gabriel say after this? Or is he in the entertainment business? Like, what? Golly, dude. Who gives a flying fuck? This team's not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere because they tried to take a big shortcut. It blew up in their face. And it sucks for guys like Myles Garrett, who, although he got paid and everything, he's just playing football in like an alternate universe. He's just playing like dominant Hall of Fame football on like everybody's side TV, dude.
Yeah.
Like that's a shame. That's a real shame, and I feel for him. And now you look at like, there's some on this defense, which has been dominant at times. Like you look at the defense and you're like, hey, there's some guy, it's starting to atrophy on defense as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the Band-Aid you have to rip off, and it's going to be 18 weeks of ripping that Band-Aid off. You're like, my kids are like, just rip it off fast. Like if my kids were the Cleveland Browns, you'd have to rip the Band-Aid off like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to take all year, and it's going to take years. But I do feel bad for Stefanski. I do feel bad for Barry. Although, again, caveat being if you guys signed off on Deshaun Watson, I kind of don't feel bad for you. I feel bad for Jerry Jeudy, who, people were like, hey, you suck. And he was like, no, I don't. And then he ends up in Cleveland, and he's been really good, man. He's a good player. And so you climb out of, that reputational coffin, and you get the bag, and it's in Cleveland.
Right.
So, like, guys' careers are getting altered and wasted here. That's the real shame of it, dude. Like, I played on teams like this most of my career. Maybe not this bad. I mean, not some of my teams were this bad. Make no mistake about it. The beautiful thing about our era, the beautiful and shameful thing about our era is if you were on a really bad team, and especially if it's not a bigger market, like, nobody's watching. So if you play well, nobody's watching. But also if you play bad and your team's bad, nobody's paying attention. In today's day and age, there's no hiding in the NFL. Like,
Right.
the Browns are going to be covered to death. And so not only are these guys getting their careers wasted, if you signed a deal with the Browns a couple of years ago, like, there goes your prime. If it was a big deal, you're not only having to deal with that, but you're also going to be like, people are watching you and watching your team, and talking about your team. So it's a tough time to be on a bad football team. It was never easy. It sucks now because you're always going to be talked about. And that's what we're doing here. I'm trying to give the Browns their due at the end of an AFC North preview, when really the Browns mission statement this year should be like,
Keep shoveling shit.
keep shoveling shit. Tank, and not like on purpose, but like, you don't have a choice. That's what tanking, like it's not like again, it's like they were falling and they're just like, all right, we got to fall a little faster.
Yep.
Jim Schwartz has won Super Bowls or been on a Super Bowl, coached on a Super Bowl team. You think he's having a lot of fun down there? He'd
Nope.
probably tell you, no, I got something for you this year, Chris, and that sort of thing. And I appreciate everybody's competitiveness and the spirit. That's what you have to do when you're on teams like this. You show up in August. Every other team almost in the NFL is, their coach is standing in front of the group and saying, hey, you got a shot. Here's our goal. And they put up like Super Bowl, whatever the fuck it is, in San Francisco. And they're like, that's our goal right there, guys. And there's like everybody kind of stares at it. And you wonder internally, could it be us? And in the middle of my career, when I played for Jeff Fisher teams, even though we were kind of middling because we couldn't get the offense going, we thought, like, maybe we can make the playoffs. Maybe we can make a run. Like, at least you have that carrot in front of you, dangling in front of you. When you're on a team like this, and I've been on 1-win team, 2-win team, multiple 2-win teams, it's hell. It really is hell. There's no rescue. It's depressing. Seriously. Think about every Sunday showing up and knowing you don't have a chance to win. And it's not the NBA where you're like, oh, let me go play a pickup basketball game. Nope. There are people trying to hurt you out there. Mm-hmm. And they're going to show you and circle you in 4-minute mode for the better part of the second half if you play for the defensive line. If you play on the offensive line, guys are going to be pinning their ears back trying to kill a quarterback who's probably not good enough. And if you're a wide receiver trying to catch a football from a quarterback, you're not going to get your numbers. And if you're a running back, that's not going to be a lot of fun either. So just no matter who you are, dude, it sucks to be on one of these teams unless you're a punter. Yep. Unless you're a punter, because you get a lot of practice.
Get some reps in.
When you're on a team like this, team goes to the nightclub after the game, courting young women. Punter walks into the nightclub. Everybody's like, oh, there's the punter. Chicks just flock to him. That's what it's like being on a bad team.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Browns fans. All right, so that was the AFC North. Thanks for listening. That is the last. I feel like this is my last day of school. That is the last division preview. So you can check out the other 17 of them on our YouTube. Also, Tuesday, we have our exciting basically wrap up the off-season show where we predict division winners, Super Bowl winners, MVP, all that stuff. Talk a little gambling. That'll be out Tuesday, me and the boys. So stick around and check that out.